let's continue on page 8. So some of you may have wondered that about clearing the table, that we have Mishnayot about clearing the table that we've ignored so far. The Mishnah says, Beit Shammai omrim, magbiin min hashulchan atzamot uklipin, Beit Hillel omrim, notelet hatavla kula min ha'ara. Right. Now, the machloket Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel here seems to indicate that you're not allowed to clear the dishes unless you do it in some kind of, right? It's a dafka here, Beit Shammai. There's an example where Beit Shammai seems to be more lenient. But why is Beit Hillel saying?
The dish might be different. No, but I'm confused with that.
But why?
Dishes may be different. We can all sum up. No. No.
Dishes. You're saying dishes would be different from atzamot.
At the end of the day, it's a dish. You could do It's a little dirty now, but like, if I were really desperate, I would eat off a dirty dish. Maybe I don't know. And I really have nothing to do whatsoever with cooking medicine.
Right. You're saying the dish. Right, but the question is why does this end up being so roundabout? Like, why is it? L'chora, we said that according to Rabbi Nechemia, you could clear because it's on the table, and not because it's on the dish, right? The heter of Rav Shalari is because it's on the table. Now, the Rashba is troubled by something else. The Rashba says, why are you allowed to meselek the tavla? Harei it's a basis l'davar asur. So he says, "Ukina b'gemara ke Rabbi Yehuda, v'af agav did leRabbi Yehuda Muktze v'nolad." Right, Rabbi Yehuda is very machmir with Muktze. Hacha b'shtzarich l'mkoma shel tavla, ina midah v'leikirav shel re'i. So, in that case, why do I have to do it at all? So we see, I'll explain. L'chora, I have a tzamot in front of me.
Is it a kula or a chumra?
Right, exactly. Is this a kula or a chumra? That's what I'm trying to say, right? To convey here. Right, what's going on here? Is this a kula or a chumra? Right, that's a good way of saying.
Another way to carry muktze than doing it for hayad, or am I learning that in the situations that I'm allowed to carry muktze, I still need to do it only for hayad?
Right, exactly. Right, because once again, and I think I keep on going to this point, back to this point, because I think it's true that it all stems from the way we're viewing the whole graph Shalari thing is not a chefza thing, it's a gavra thing, meaning it's a heter to carry it. It's a heter to get rid of it, sorry. It's a heter to make myself no longer repulsed by this thing that's in front of me, right? And they say, okay, there's a heter, fair enough. So that doesn't mean that it's not Muktze. It just means you have a heter to get rid of it. Wait, is there any other way to get rid of it that won't be overly burdensome? So it's better to do that. So that's the point. So the Rashba, the Rashba says, why are you allowed to carry the bones? Why are you allowed to throw the bones over with right? You pick up the tabletop and you throw the bones like that, right? Why? Yeah, because the graph Shalari. Wait, so why not pick up the bones themselves? Say, as Yaakov said, we have too many kulot here. The kulav that you're doing it indirectly, and kula that's the graph Shalari. So how do we end up with that, right? It seems that the graph Shalari is more of a diavadi thing, and then we end up dafka, right? Dafka because the Rashba proved too much, right? As he says his answer is too good. When he says graph shel re'i, too good, what I mean is, he says graph shel re'i, say, oh, so that's a general kula that should have just solved the whole problem, right? So we see here the graph shel re'i isn't quite as good a heter as we thought it was. So you see. So you see in the Shulchan Aruch, atzamot sheruim leklavim, uklipim sheruim l'chal be'ema, u'firuim she'en be'em kazayit, mutar la'aviram al shulchan. So as long as you can feed your animals with them, etc., so they're not muktze. אבל אם אין הקליפים ראויים l'chal be'ema, אסור לטלטלם ולא מנער את הטבלה והם נופלים. Now, this is surprising because why would this not fall under the rubric of Gaf Shel Re'i? Can I not say this is yucky stuff, I just want to get rid of it? So the Rabbi says, צריך עיון, שכתבו האחרונים, אפילו יש בבית קליפי אגוזים דמוקצים, מותר לכבדם בכנף אבז, דאף על ידי כגרף של ראי. You have to sweep up, we talked about sweeping in the past, right? You have to sweep up the nutshells, whatever, right? יש לחלק בקרקע מאיסה יותר מעל השולחן. So one option is to say that really on the table, it's not as gross. Why not? I could make your face like, really? On the floor, it's grosser. I think you don't want to step in it, as opposed to you're going to step in it, the baby's going to stick it in his mouth, all kinds of gross things. On the table, you can avoid it. I think that's what he means. Oh, so he's saying the Rashba that way, and saying, if you can, am I allowed to clear my bones from the table? The answer is yes. But if you could avoid that, is it preferable? The answer is yes too, right? So you're right. I'm only chumras today, right? Last week was kulas. Now we're also chumras. Okay. Beseder. Let's see a bit about cats. Rav Baruch, you want to talk about cats? Let's talk about cats. Says Shel Avraham, נראה כמו שגרף של ראי אין בו איסור טלטול, כן יש היתר שיטלטלו לחוץ מתוך הבית חתול. Now, what's grosser, a mouse or a cat? All right. No, so he says not because of the cat, מצד שמצואת חתול צריכים להרחיק כמו משל אדם. That's why I gotta take the cat out. Not for the cat, but for what the cat might leave behind. ואין צריך לומר, אם מוחזק, שכשתלין בבית, תטיל שם צואה, שיש מקום לומר, שהרי זה כגרף של ראי ממש. It's potential גרף של ראי. הגם שגרף של ראי הוא גם מעופות, מכל מקום לא שייך כן בעופות, שכיוון שיהיה מותר לו להוציא הצואה אחר שתטילנה העוף. למה תטיל העוף מקודם? אם בשעת שינה תטיל, הרי נקפדה, אז במה שתשע את הצואה בבית. הקפדה רק בידיעה וראייה. This is an awesome thing. He says, when you're asleep and the birds are pooing in your house, you don't see it. It doesn't really bother you, right? As opposed to you'll wake up in the morning and the cat left things behind, so then it will be, right? מה שאין כן בשל חתול שיש קפדה שכשיצטרך לעמוד בלילה בלי נר ולא יוכל לנקות ביתו, יצטער. לזה הוא מוכר להוציא החתול כשאינו יכול להוציאה מהבית על ידי שבורחת הנבל ומתחבט וצריך לטלטלה בידו. Saying you're not take the cat out. The cat is Muktze, right? You have to take the cat out. Again, forget the pet hitter that we had in the past. Say the cat, if the cat is Muktze, right? He basically says, the important thing to me was the last part, but it's just interesting the way he analyzes. He analyzes repulsion and says you are more repulsed by what you see in front of you in certain contexts, right? Bird poop doesn't bother you so much, so you're not allowed to. So you wouldn't be allowed to clear it anyway. So there's no justification to get the bird out. As opposed to the cat really is upsetting, and therefore you shouldn't leave the cat in. So you should get rid of the cat in advance, right? Now,
you can have a preemptive graph.
Preemptive graph shel re'i, that's right. I think this might preemptive graph shel re'i not reach a point where the graph shel re'i will be more upsetting. I see the last point here. לפי משקל ראשון שלי אמרתי שליטול החתול אסור, ביקשתי שיוציאו החתול, ואני שגרשוה בגערה וכדומה. Right? There are other methods of getting the cat out of the house. המשלת הלכה ותפסה החתול בידיה, כשראיתי כן, הוא מחליט לה מזורקה לחוץ בידיה. So I was debating, is he continuing under the same vein as the Rashba and the Liraba, and saying that if you can avoid carrying it by hand, it's preferable? So the truth is, when I read this before, I thought yes, but now I realize that I think he means that before he changed his mind and said that it's allowed. Not entirely sure what he means there. Right? I used to think it's asur, now I realize it's mutar, so it changed, so it's different, right? So have a look at Rav Shlomo Zalman here. Raf, you want to heterim? Let's see Rav Shlomo Zalman. Mashma dino chayav leheter min hatzad begufo. V'ayim mishum dechashiv keheter v'lo kedichui. So lomar dav hapich haynu nosim gav shelechatchila v'sof sof haheter hu rak lesalko me'alav. Meaning, I said the two things we talked about this evening were both based on the Gavra idea, right? In other words, it's all a matter of context, and therefore, am I allowed to cause it to be something that's within my proximity, right? If it's already, right, am I allowed to cause it to happen to begin with? Am I allowed to cause it to be within my proximity? Am I allowed to put myself in its proximity, right? There's all discussions that stem from the Gavra idea, right? The concept that the graf shel re'i is allowed to, you're allowed to carry the graf shel re'i that in the situation you're allowed to carry it, but it's still muktze objectively, right? Now that might sound like we're saying that it's only a dichui, like do the minimal possible amount, right? It remains muktze. They said the Rashba and the Rabbah seem to go in that vein and say, yeah, it's still muktze, so you really shouldn't be carrying it. Now, no. It really is, you don't connect these two. Don't connect these two. You're not allowed to cause the situation because ultimately you're only allowed to get rid of it, to get yourself out of its proximity, or it out of yours, right? But once you're there, you're allowed to carry it mamash. You can carry it normally. You don't need to go out of your way. The klipim atzamot. He says you happen to want to do it regardless. That's the other option the Rashba raised. Okay, so said we'll continue the rest of that next time. But I just on a closing point that we discussed this evening two different heterim, two different issues, two different chumras. Different chumras really. And the within graf shel re'i, since graf shel re'i is only a matter of within the context of its ruining my Shabbat, I'm allowed to move it away so it won't ruin my Shabbat. Therefore, I'm not allowed to cause the situation in which it would be ruining my Shabbat lechatchila. Right? This touches on to what we saw in one before in the Magid Mishneh, right? Magid Mishneh, who says you're allowed to, once it's there, you're allowed to get rid of it. You're just not allowed to create the heter situation, the heter situation. The Rabbi and the Rashba want to go beyond that and say not only that, but also once it's there, if you have other options, they're preferable, right? That sounds very much like the Rambam, who says, like, why do you need to sit in the middle? You could sit at home, right? You don't have to lie down in the middle and therefore be repulsed by all the mud that's flying around there, right? You could just go home and then it won't bother you, right? Where you should be anyway, right? Shlomo Zalman says, no, these are two different things, right? Once you're in the situation, it's a mamash heter, but creating the situation, and again, as I said, the machlok between the Rambam and the Rashba about what does creating situation entail. Creating situation means making something gross or making something gross to me, my being in the proximity of it. Shkoyach.